So without wasting our time, let's directly jump into today's session. One second. So coming to the next 1 hour agenda, right? So maybe few of you might be already working as a ETL and big data tester, and few might be working on manual testing, and few might have already working on ETL automation with some pandas data frames and then Pyspark. I've seen many people reaching out to me to understand how framework is implemented, and they have some fair idea on pandas data frames and then fair idea on Pyspark data frames. I'm not sure how to get started with the frameworks, and some are reaching out to me that they have some ETL testing experience or big data testing experience, but they never worked on Python and Pyspark, right? So before we directly jumping into like the course content, all those details, right? First, we'll try to understand why we need ETL automation, why every company started looking for the resource who is having Python knowledge nowadays. So if you attend any interview, right? So the very first question after your interview, basic things, right? They might ask you, uh, like, do you have any experience in Python, or do you have any experience with Pytest, okay? Or maybe do you have any experience in ETL automation, right? So the reason because uh, maybe let me jump to the next slide. So the reason because so if you go to any ETL project, right? So guys, if you do not have any ETL testing experience, right? So we plan to conduct one more demo session in the next week, mid of next week or next weekend. Uh, like if you are already experienced in ETL testing, maybe you will follow my session, the next 1 hour session. But if you are completely fresher and if you do not have any ETL testing experience, right? It might take some time to observe all the information that I'm discussing. But please stay, don't disconnect from the call. That if you are not able to understand anything about this automation, right? So next week we are planning to conduct one more demo session only on the ETL testing. Okay. So that you will get some ETL fair area in the ETL, but today's demo is only for the automation. Okay. So coming back to the original topic, right? So if you go to any ETL projects now, so this is the typical architecture. Uh, it can be ETL or big data. So maybe I just written some on the left side, you see files. Under the files, you will see CSV, JSON, Navro, Parquet file, and then you will also see Oracle, SQL Server database, MySQL, Databricks Delta Table, Cosmos DB, DynamoDB, right? So there are a number of databases available in the market. Also, you see the Kafka live streaming as well. Okay. So if you go to any ETL projects, so this is the typical ETL architecture or big data architecture. Some projects may have some additional steps. Some project might have some less steps, but the architecture will follow the same process, right? So in the left hand side, you will see all the data sources. So in your project, maybe you might be having only source as files. Some projects will have files plus DB. Some projects will have all three: files, databases, and Kafka streaming, right? So whatever it may be, data will flow from left to the right, the bronze layer. I just written bronze layer, silver and gold. But if you work on any ETL project, it might be landing area, it might be stage area, it might be raw area, whatever. Okay. So I just written some generic naming convention here, but the layer will change project to project, architecture to architecture. Okay. So this layer we call it as a transformation layer, right? So from transformation layer, data will be pushed to the reporting. It can be SAP BO reporting, or it can be Power BI reporting, or it can be Tableau reporting, right? So this is the one of the downstream application. So likewise, this data also connected to the web application in your project, or maybe it can be also connected to the machine learning algorithms as well. So these are the use cases of ETL project. So at the end, so they wanted to utilize this data to connect to the reporting tool, or to connect to the front end application, or to connect to the machine learning algorithms to further process the data and then analyze what kind of customer, how to acquire the customer, all of the stuff. So to do this ETL automation, right? Also to implement this data ingestion pipelines. So generally in the market, developers will use these kind of tools like Informatica, SSIS, data stage, some will use PLSQL, and then AWS Glue. So right now, the market is on cloud platforms, right? So AWS Glue is one of the ETL tool in the cloud, AWS Cloud, Azure ADF. Okay, this is service in the Azure platform. Some will use Pyspark code also to do this processing from source to the target, right? So now if this is the architecture for your project, or maybe not full-fledged architecture, maybe one of this application. For example, you take source as a file as maybe CSV, JSON, or a Parquet file. So as a ETL tester, right? So it is very difficult to compare file versus database, right? So there is a one place where ETL tester will struggle a lot to validate data between file versus database. So there is a one scenario. The second scenario, if you go to the Kafka streaming, right? So data will be in the JSON format. So to compare the JSON data with the table which is in the structured format. So Kafka is actually semi-structured data. Database table is actually structured data. So comparing semi-structured data to structured data, it is very difficult for the ETL tester. So my intention is to explain why we need ETL automation, right? So if you get this kind of architecture, it's very difficult to validate data between file versus DB or Kafka data versus a database, or maybe database to database if the database is in the different environment like on-premises versus cloud. So we don't be having access to the on-premises database and then cloud database as the one place. So we have to run the query in the on-premises, we have to run query in the cloud environment and then manually compare this data. So these are the few challenges that we are facing as a ETL tester. That's where even companies started looking for the person who know ETL testing plus Python knowledge, right? So consider this is the ETL architecture. For example, if you have source as a CSV file or JSON file or Avro file or Parquet file, and data is flowing from bronze, silver, gold layer, and then downstream application. So if I consider this as an example, right? So I've taken one simple mapping document just to explain how we are currently working and how we can uh, uh, avoid these challenges by using this automation. Okay. So I've just taken one simple mapping document. One second, guys. So let me zoom it. Okay. So if you are already experienced, you might seen similar files in your ETL projects already or big data projects already. So you will be having a mapping document. So this is one mapping document. And this mapping is having file to raw transformations, and then raw to branch, right? Sorry, file to bronze, bronze to silver, and silver to gold layer, right? So again, so this naming convention will change project to project, architecture to architecture, but I have taken some generic names. So when we process the data, the file data will be loaded to the bronze, then bronze data will be loaded to the silver by applying some transformations. You can see the transformations here, and then data will be moved to silver to the gold with applying some other transformation. Right? So if this is the scenario, currently if the source is file, okay, that is CSV file. So what are the challenges that we are currently facing, right? So if you want to validate file versus DB, it is very difficult, right? So how we are normally doing, maybe this is one of the approach, there might be several approaches. So what I normally do, right? So I load this file to the QA created table. First, we insert the file data to the QA created table, and then we'll start comparing QA created table with the actual table. So this is the one of the approach. The second approach, we can upload target table data to the CSV file, and then by using CSV macros or Excel macros, we can compare two files data, and then we can say whether data is matching or not matching. Okay, so these processes are not easy if you have huge amount of data. So Excel can handle only 1 million of record. What if you want to validate more than 1 million record? It's very difficult, right? And that too, if you want to do the same validations multiple times with the multiple files, right? Or maybe the incremental load or SCD type 1, type 2. So it's very difficult to convert the file data to the tabular format, or maybe inserting again and again. And at the end, we lose focus what we are exactly doing, right? And even once you insert the data also, right? Again, we have to run the SQL queries. Okay. So schema check, we normally compare with the schema file or maybe mapping document with the target schema. Once it is matching, we say schema is passed, and then count check, we compare. We run query on top of your QA created table with actual table, right? And then duplicate query we write on the target. Null check we do, uniqueness check, data compare check, and then audit column check, and then different types of validations like initial load validation, incremental load validation, SCD type 1, type 2. So if the file is the source, so if you want to validate these validations, it's not that easy as database to database comparison. Guys, do you agree? Say yes or no. Is it easy to compare file versus database?
No.
Guys, say yes or no. You can unmute.
No.
No, right?
Oh, no.
So it's very
No, I
difficult.
think
Okay.
no, we can create a dummy table and load. We can compare, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. See, load the
Yeah, that's what
file
he
data to the
explained.
QA create table and then perform data
Yeah.
validations. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So we can follow this approach, and the other approach we can upload, or you can create one more file on top of your target table, and then compare CSV file versus CSV file or Excel file versus Excel file. Right? What if your source is JSON file? Right? So it's very difficult to use macros also. It's very even it's very difficult to insert the table semi-structured data into tabular format. Do you face these challenges, guys, earlier in your projects? Anyone faced JSON files? Anyone used JSON files in your project? Yes, yes, some. Be attentive in the class.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I used it.
Yeah, so JSON files, again, we have simple JSON file, complex JSON file, multi-line JSON file, and then Kafka streaming JSON formats. Okay, there are multiple JSON formats as well. Okay, so it's very difficult to convert semi-structured format to the tabular format and then compare. Okay, so that is the reason. So and again, you might be having the question why data is coming in the JSON format? Why JSON data is coming in the Avro format? Why data is coming in the Parquet format? Right. So these are the evolution in the market. If you go to any cloud platforms, so they have optimized storage account, right? So if you go to the ADLS or if you go to the S3, so they have optimized storage with the help of Parquet files. So that's where people started using Parquet file as a source files or Parquet as a target, right? Even Avro files. Okay? And even if you use live stream data, they generally use the JSON formatted data. Okay, so we cannot avoid these kind of data sources in our projects, right? So this is the one of the problem that we are facing or the challenge that we are facing currently. The other challenge is, for example, we have already access, we already know how to create the table. We thought to use this approach, but sometimes they won't allow you to insert, they won't allow you to create the database tables. So you will get some access issues as well, right? So they never give you access to create QA created table, right? So assume you have access, okay, and then we have seen these problems, right? Multiple table, multiple file insertion, or right. So one more challenge, even if you take CSV file, sometimes you don't find CSV headers, right? Sometimes you will have the CSV file with some headers with some junk columns. Sometimes CSV file with some footer info. So it's very difficult to manage this kind of files in ETL projects as a tester, especially. So developers can write some code because they know already programming language. So they write some Python, Pyspark code to convert data into the proper format and then validate it. So as a tester, if you don't know Python, Pyspark, it's very difficult to insert the data if the file do not have the header, if the file do not have like file having some header, some junk columns, file with footer, file with multiple headers. Okay. And coming to the Parquet files, right? So I don't know whether you already seen this kind of Parquet files, Avro files. So Parquet file, Avro files, we cannot open from our laptop applications. So CSV file we can open from our desktop applications like Notepad++, Notepad, or maybe we can use some other IDs or tools to open these files and then update the data. But if your source is Parquet file, if your target is Parquet file, right? So we can't open from our local systems. So let me show you one simple file, one simple Parquet file. Okay. Okay. So this is one Parquet file. So if I want to open this file, see it is opening in the encrypted format. You can also try this file with the help of Notepad++ or maybe Notepad or Word document or maybe docx. So you cannot open this file. Even if you open, it will display in the encrypted format. Okay, so not only this, okay, you can also see the Avro file. This is the Avro file, right? So Avro file is also, it is showing the encrypted format. So we cannot view the data which are present in the Parquet files by using our local applications like Notepad++ or Notepad. Okay, so there is a one more challenge. Guys, have you ever used these Parquet files in your projects? Anyone used Parquet Avro files in your projects? Yes, yes or no?
For me, no.
No.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
So yeah, so whoever said yes, did you guys open this Parquet file, Avro file by using Notepad++? Anytime?
No, sir, we cannot.
Yeah, we cannot open. Even if you open, you will see data in the encrypted format. We cannot view the data, exact data in the file. Okay.
Binary format.
Yeah. And then, guys, you can go on mute now. Okay. Okay. So the next challenge, now, if your source is CSV file or Parquet file or JSON file, Avro file. So since we are working in the real world, real data processing, right? So data might be very huge in size. So earlier we were getting some millions of records. That's where people were using CSV files because CSV can handle, or maybe Excel files earlier. Okay. CSV file now it can handle even more than 1 million. So if it is more than 1 million, it is very difficult to open from our local IDs, right? Like Notepad++, or any file. So even comparison also bit tougher. Okay, so even data is growing. Data is now it's coming millions to billions of records and in each of the file. Okay, and then so these are the few challenges that we are facing as a ETL testers, and also there are few other challenges as well. So if you want to do the regression testing or sanity testing or smoke testing, if your source is CSV file or Parquet file or Avro file, it's very difficult, right? Again, you have to insert the data and then perform some validations and then do some testing, right? So it is actually a tedious process. Okay. Also, if you want to generate the test data, so I already explained. So Parquet file we cannot open from our local system, right? So how we can create Parquet files? If you want to create some test data, maybe you want to do test data creation for even negative testing or positive testing. So we cannot open Parquet file. We cannot add the new records to these Parquet files or the Avro file. So if it is CSV, we can add it, but Parquet Avro, it's very difficult, right? So that's where Python will help you to resolve all your challenges that you are facing, Python or Pyspark. Yes, so far clear, everyone? Do you agree with all the problems that or challenges that you are facing? Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So having all these problems, okay, so there are already some tools popular in the market from long time. Okay, those whatever challenges that I just spoke, right? Those are already resolved with some IDEs or some tools that are already in the market. For example, if you take Informatica IDQ, so this will actually do some data quality checks or maybe data quality of profiling. Right? So we can use IDQ to do the data profiling and some basic checks on your data. Okay, that too we can perform only on the target or maybe only on the source. We cannot compare source versus target in this Informatica IDQ. So IDQ mainly used for data profiling. Okay, and again it's not the open source; it's a paid tool. We have to purchase the license for it. Okay, there is one more popular tool for ETL testing, especially it is there from long time. I've seen this tool was popular from 2013, but very less companies are using query search because of it's a paid tool. Okay, we have to purchase the license, right? So if they want to purchase license, they cannot purchase for one resource, right? Because if you have 10 QA team, 10 people are working on ETL testing project, so all 10 should have this query source tool to do this automation, or maybe at least 1, 2 people should have this access to automate your test cases. Okay, query search were quite popular, but it is a commercial tool. That's where very few companies are using query search tool as a ETL automation tool. And then we have Tosca, we have Query IO, right? And if you maybe in the recent days, these tools are again becoming popular. Great Expectation, it's a Python library, Databand, SodaDQ, okay, PyDQ. So if you observe all these tools, right, some are commercial, some are open source. Okay, so Great Expectation is actually not fully open source. Okay, there is a library in Python, Great Expectation. With the help of Great Expectation, we can do, but it is not full-fledged automation tool. SodaDQ again, it's a commercial tool. Okay, PyDQ again, kind of commercial tool. Okay. So some are commercial, some are open source. Okay. So but in this training, right, maybe once you enroll for this program, so we will be discussing more on the Python, how we can use this Python language for ETL automation. Okay, so that's why the reason we have chosen Python as a programming language for your ETL automation, right? So because of it's not commercial, it's a open source, and Python is more suitable for data automation. Okay, so we can also use Java, we can also use .NET. Okay, but .NET, Java programming languages are not suitable for data automation. Okay, so that's why we are choosing Python as a language for ETL automation. So guys, maybe before we jump into the next slide, do you guys used query search in your projects earlier? Anybody have experience on one of these tools? IDQ, query search, Tosca, query IO. Anybody worked earlier, or maybe Java
Yes,
Selenium?
I worked on informatic
Yes.
IDQ.
So anytime you compare the data between source and target, no, right? You can only do the
No,
data profile.
only for ETL purpose.
Yeah,
Loading
data
purpose.
profiling purpose. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, so that's where like is. Okay. So all these tools, whatever it is listed here, right? These are not full-fledged data automation tools. These are data quality checks tools. Okay. So only query search is quite popular because it can do both ETL automation as well as ETL data quality checks. That's why this uh, tool is popular, but again, it's a commercial tool. So very companies are using this commercial tools. Okay. So now coming back to our original question, people were facing so many difficulties if sources files, not only this guys, okay, not only file versus database. Assume you are migrating data from on-premises to the cloud, right? In the on-premises, data is in the maybe Oracle DB, but in the cloud, data is moved to the Redshift DB or maybe some other database. So databases are heterogeneous now. It is very difficult to compare the data, right? We have to manually do it. So to avoid all of these issues, okay, so we can use this Python language or maybe Python plus Pyspark plus Pytest tools to automate all the challenges that we are facing. So we can mitigate all these problems. Okay, so how we can do that by using some automation frameworks. So I would say some automation framework. The reason because there are a number of quite popular tools in the market which are open source. Some implemented by using Python, some implemented by using Pytest, Python Pytest framework. Some is implemented using just Python Pandas data frames. Some projects implemented automation with the help of Pandas then Pyspark without using Pytest. But in this training, I'm going to cover all kinds of frameworks. Maybe I'll cover 2 to 3 different frameworks in this training. Okay. So one framework that we are going to discuss in this classes, right? Maybe not now, maybe in the future classes, is the Pytest automation framework. Okay. So the framework architecture look like this. Okay. In the left side, I just mentioned any typical ETL project architecture: file to bronze, bronze to silver, silver to gold. Again, this naming convention will vary project to project, or maybe the layers will increase project to project or reduce project to project. Okay. So if this is your project, so what we do, we create configuration files to compare file data versus table data. So this config will contain the information about your source file or target file, or maybe source database, target database, or source table and then target table. Okay. I'll show all this in the demo today, how config is created, how test file is created, how framework is created in some time. First, let me clarify or let me explain this framework architecture, then we'll jump into the live demo class. Okay. So in the config files, we keep YML files as a configuration file, and then we also use JSON file. As I mentioned, right, CSV file with header, without header, JSON file, some tags, right, and then Parquet file or maybe Avro file. So for all of this, we need to provide the schema because we should not do any manual effort. Okay, so we will feed the schema information for your source file, and then we read the data. For that, we are using JSON files. Okay? And then you also see the SQL. So SQL is necessary because when we do the ETL automation, right, we need to compare our source data and then target data. So if you want to compare source data, source will be in the raw format, right? You need to apply some transformations. To apply the transformation, we use SQL files, SQL file. So once we have these configuration files, so we create test files. Pytest will accept the test files as your test cases. Inside the test files, we write the test methods. Okay, so these test methods and then configuration files will be feed to the framework. So in the framework, we have written like almost 30-40 different data validations and the data quality check functions. So whatever data you are passing, so this data will be fed to this framework. Framework will actually do the necessary reads and necessary validations, and then will give us one report or multiple reports. For instance, I just mentioned here email report with all the failures and then detailed information, Slack notifications, and it can also give us the HTML report. So I just written few here, but we can also extend with early reporting, or we can also write this output back to some test management tool like X-ray, Jira, and then ALM or VS Code. Okay. So to make it this training very simple, I just written only email and then HTML report and Slack notification, but we can extend this reports to some other level. Okay. So this is the framework architecture that I'm going to cover in this training, guys. Okay. So now, so let me show you one live demo how this framework will work. Okay. And then we'll come back and see what topics I'm going to discuss in this training. Okay. So let me close these files. Okay. So this is the framework, guys. Okay. So this is the framework. So where we have created a GitHub workflows. So these two files are used in the CI/CD pipeline. So where we keep the steps. I'm not going to discuss in depth about these files at this moment because we have only 1 hour slot to explain all the things, right? So maybe I'll cover the CI/CD everything maybe in our regular classes. Okay, not here. So this is the GitHub CI/CD pipeline files. Okay. And we have the jars files required to read data from the different databases and different cloud platforms. So Azure storage to read data from the ADLS account. And then you see MS SQL is to read data from SQL Server DB. Postgres jar is used to read data from the Postgres. Snowflake jar is used to read data from the Snowflake. So this is the jar folder. And we have written SRC source code. Under this source code, we have written different validations. Okay, so you see count validation, data compare, duplicate check, null value check, record only in the source, record only in the target, schema validation, uniqueness check. So I've taken only few validations here, but I have written around 30 to 40 different validations and data quality check functions. Okay, but to make it this training very simple, I just written only 6 to 7 different validation scripts here. Okay, so let me show you one function. So this is the count check function. So this count check function will take source and targets as input and key columns as a another parameter, and then do some validations and return us some output. Okay, so this is the code for the data count validation. So likewise, we have written multiple functions. Okay? This is under SRC, and under the utility, we have written some code to generate some reports and then some general libraries. Okay? And then since we are using Pytest framework to automate our ETL test cases, so Pytest test cases we should write under the test folder. So I have created test folder. Under the test folder, we have written multiple table validation files. So if I go back to maybe one of the table validation, table 11. So here you can observe config YML, schema JSON, test table 11, transformation SQL. So if I go back to this architecture diagram, so this is the project architecture. We don't need to worry about this project architecture. This will vary project to project. Okay, our framework architecture will start from config file. Okay, so config file YML JSON SQL file. You can observe here for any table. See table 11 validation. I have created config YML file, schema JSON, test table 11.py, and then transformation.sql. Okay, so if I open this config YML file, in this file we keep our source target information. Okay. So for example, you want to validate file versus file. So we keep source as file, type as CSV, if it is CSV. If it is JSON, we keep JSON. If it is Parquet, we keep Parquet. If it is Avro, we keep Avro. Okay. And then we provide schema Y. So the reason we need schema Y, because sometimes, right, when we work on the real ETL projects or big data projects, CSV file comes with header without some files with header without header. So some files we get header will contain some junk characters. So column names will have some extra spaces, or maybe column names will have some at the rate symbol or hash symbol, hyphen symbol, all of this. Okay. To compare target schema, we use schema equal to Y. So if you provide schema equal to Y, we need to provide the schema. Okay. So this actually tells when you are reading the data, this is the file we use to read the data as a schema. So first column will be considered as identifier, type as this one. So we are explicitly feeding schema while reading your source data. Okay. So likewise, so this is the schema config file. This config file will contain your source details, target details. I'll show you file versus GB also. This is file versus file, and then validations. Okay. So in the validations, we keep each validation config. So if you are doing count check, what is the primary key? If you are doing duplicates, what is the primary key? If you are doing null check, what on which column you need to perform null value check? Okay. If you are doing uniqueness check, on which column you want to perform uniqueness check? So data comparison check. What is the key value to compare the data, actual data, source minus target, target minus source? Yes, clear so far? Any questions? Yeah. So once you enroll for this program, right, we'll explain all this framework, everything. Don't worry. But today I just wanted to show you one free demo how the framework is implemented, because few of you are reaching to me that how framework is implemented, what topics you used, all these things. So that's why I thought to explain framework implementation. So if you have any questions, right, maybe you can keep that question at the end. But if it is simple question, we can discuss now.
Sir, will you start the framework from the scratch, right?
Yes. This is the previous batch framework
So,
implementation.
okay, so you can, as you discuss, actually here are some validations are there. Only 5 to 6 validations are there. So will you cover all 30 validations, right?
Yeah. It's a very difficult to discuss all 30 in the training, but I'll give the code to all different validations.
Okay.
I'll give the code.
Further, will you discuss, right?
Yeah.
In coming classes.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is one configuration file, guys. So likewise for another table validation, maybe one more table validation, I created table 12. So for this table also, you will see the same structure. Okay, for every table validation, you see config, schema, JSON, table 11. If you're doing table 11 validation, and then transformation.sql. So right now it is a file to file. We don't need to keep any transformation query. It will be empty. Okay? You don't need to provide this one. Okay? And if it is so again table 12. So in the table 12, here we are reading data from the file, and here I'm reading data from the table. So this is the database table. See, table info. Okay. So it's a file versus DB validation. So this is the Snowflake database actually. Okay, Snowflake, the cloud Snowflake database. Okay. So and then we provide. So this is constant. This structure is constant across the different tables. Only values will get changed. So for every table validation, you have to create config YML file, schema JSON file. It is applicable, and test table the test file, and then transformation SQL if it is applicable. So if you need transformation query, just write your transformation query. If you don't need, just keep empty file here. But the structure should be constant across the different validations. Okay. So and now you might be having questions. So let me go back to this architecture. See, we have discussed YML file is used to define your source target configuration, JSON file to create the schema of your files, and SQL to provide your transformation SQL for your scripts. Okay. Then test files. Okay. These are the important files in the Pytest framework. Okay. This is the test file. Say test table 11, test table 12. So if I open test table 11, so here we write what kind of validations you need to perform on test table 11. Okay. So count check, duplicate check, okay, null check, and uniqueness check, and then data compare check, okay, and then schema check. Okay. So in each of the test case, we have written asset. Okay. In the asset, we are calling count check library, okay, duplicate check library, null check library, okay, unique check library. So Pytest will take some fixtures. So these are the fixtures we have written. So if I go to the read data, right? So here we have written code to read data from the different data sources by using your configuration file. See, we are reading config data, then we are checking whether it's a Python file or SQL file, and then we read data from the different files and different data sources basically. So here see, for CSV we return the code, for JSON we have written the code, and then for Parquet we have written the code, our file we have written the code, so TXT file we have written the code. Okay. So these files can be anywhere, guys. It can be in the local server, it can be in the you might be working on Azure cloud or maybe AWS cloud, right? So this framework can be used for any cloud platform. Okay, there is no limitation at all. Okay. So yeah, so now let me run and show you how framework will get executed. So I am going to run two files now, test table 11 and test table 12. So to run Pytest, we have to use this command. So there are multiple approaches to run Pytest code. So this is one of the approach. We can also create runner file and then we can run, but let me explain with this command. Okay. So Pytest, and then I want to run table 12 and table 11 validations. So let me run this. Okay. So table 11 is having 6 test cases. We already see. So these are the 6 test cases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So all 6 test cases from the table 11, 6 more test cases from the table 12 will get executed now, and then will return us one file. See, now it has collected 12 items. That means 12 test cases, and it start executing one by one. The file versus file will get validated now, and then file versus DB also will get validated. Okay. So maybe in the interest of time, let me show you the previous report that was generated, right? So I think this was generated 0320. Let me open this. Okay.
So,
So you will
are
find
you using any design pattern or object-oriented programming in this?
no. We are not using any OOPS concept, but I'll cover OOPS concepts in this training.
Okay. Any
Yeah,
design
I'll come to
pattern?
that part. Yeah, I'll come
Okay,
to that curriculum part. Just let me explain this complete framework implementation, and then we'll go to the topics that I'm going to cover in this training. Okay. So total 12 test cases are executed now. 9 failed, 3 pass. Okay. You can see this is the report that is generated now. Yeah, 2022. Sorry, 2203 2025. Okay. Let me open this. Okay. You can observe now count check is passed. Duplicate check also passed. So null check failed. Okay, so null check failed. On the middle initial column, I'm just validating if there are any null values. There are null values, it is displayed 11 records of the null record. Okay, and also displays the sample data as well. The sample data, identifier 1, this is the primary key in the table or the file. This is having some null values. You can also observe, so identifier 1, this is the entire record, guys. Okay, so we say it's a middle initial is null, right? So it displays middle initial is null. Let me show you. See, middle initial is null. Okay, it's not just displays the number of failures, it also displays sample records. Okay, so unique net check, there are failures in the unique net check. So it is displaying identified 0, having 0 duplicates, but surname is having 3 duplicates. Okay, data compare pass, no issues with the data compare. And then schema check. So this is the first table 12 validation. So table 11 validation are this. Okay, maybe I need to add some additional lines of code just to segregate which one is for what. But this is the table 11 validation. So their count is failed. So if count is failed, it will not just display the fail. Okay, it will also display why it is failed. What records extra in the source, what records extra in the target. See, records only in the source, it's a fail. So count 2, because 2 records are extra in the source, which are not present in the target. See, identifier 11, identifier 14 are extra in the source. Same way in the target, there are 5 extra records. These 5 records are not present in the source. So displays the actual keys. Okay, all 5 records. So by which we can tell, okay, maybe these records are missing in the source, missing in the target, and then we can analyze whether it's correct or not, and then we can raise a bug. Right? We don't need to go and run the queries manually. So already these queries are executed and displayed the proper output. So you can just see this 9 record why it is missing. Okay? Small analysis is required just to report the bug. Okay? Likewise, it will do for all validations. Okay? So now this is just a high level summary. But if you observe, right, if there is any failure, it will also display why it is failed. For example, let me show you. So this is the failure on the primary seat number. Okay. So on the identifier 9, okay, source primary key is null value. Target is having 9/574. It's a fail. Okay. So it is also able to display where exactly the failure is, in which column, which row has the issue. So identifier 9 is the key column. On this key column, source street number is null, but target is having 9/574. And then same way, let me show you one more column where not, yeah. So if you observe, right, the zip code column. So I wantedly made these changes, guys, just to show you how this framework will work. So in the identifier column, it is having the key is 3. So it has source zip code is 43534, but target is having 560045. It's clearly able to distinguish where exactly the issue is, which row has the issue. We don't need to write source minus target, target minus source, and then display, and then go and verify each column where in which column the issue is. So this will display the exact issue for your data. Likewise for all columns. See? The null we cannot compare it. That's why I say 9 null here in the source, but in the target is Balanagar. See, there is one more record, city previous column. It is 2 in the identifier 2, city previous source is Pytest, and then target city previous is Anantapur. Guys, getting it? How detailed it is displaying the output?
Yes. Yes.
So even if you want to see manually, right? Let me show you. We are comparing two files, right? This file and this file, okay? Underscore s underscore t. So you can also observe two identify two. This is identify two. Maybe it is very difficult to navigate, but somewhere you will find, see, a test here. Okay. The same if you compare in the target, you will see some different value on the. Okay. So that's how it will display the output. So not only this, even let me show you the schema validation also. See, when it is doing schema validation, right? Source column is identified, target column is also identified, and then see data type is mismatch here. So in the source data, it is a big int, but in the target, it is integer type. Okay? So if column is not present in the source or present in the target, it will also display with the null here. But right now all columns are matching, but data type is mismatched. So it is able to clearly identify what is the issue with the data type also. Big int in the source, in the target, it is integer type. Guys, clear how framework will work?
Yes. This runs on Pyspark in the backend.
Yes. In the backend, it uses Pyspark data frames.
Okay. And that is on cloud or is it on premise?
Right now, it is hosted in the local. I am using local Pyspark, but we can host this in the GitHub CI/CD, and then we can run from the GitHub runners, or we can run from the Databricks environment.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So,
can also run from
so,
new ADF jobs as well.
Sir, I have a quick question.
No,
Yeah,
one
go for it.
questions I'll take at the end, guys. Maybe let me finish. We have another 10 minutes of time. Let me finish my content, and then I'll take all the questions from you. We'll spend extra time after the session. Okay. So coming back, right? So this is the framework. I just showed one demo also. So right now I just shown one simple txt or the log file where it will display the issue. But we can also trigger. We have already implemented the email integration and the Slack notification, the HTML report. These I'll cover as part of actual classes. Okay, not here. And then, so this framework can be used across file to file, file to DB, DB to DB. I just shown, right, file to DB. Okay? CSV file versus DB validation, we have seen database table validation. So I also shown file versus file. So I shown file versus file, CSV versus CSV, but we can change CSV versus JSON, JSON versus CSV, or Parquet versus CSV, anything. Okay. So basically, there is no limitation in this framework now. So you can apply this framework for heterogeneous databases or heterogeneous file validation. Okay, DB versus file, DB versus DB. Even you can also use this for the streaming data validation also, like Kafka. Okay, and we can also use this framework for on-premises to cloud validations. Suppose your project is migrating from on-premises to the cloud, right? So you can use this framework to validate your data. Okay. So coming to the course content, right? So after seeing all of this, right, maybe the framework implementation, all of this. So to start with the framework, we need all these concepts. See, we can also implement the framework with only Python. We can also use only Pandas, or maybe Python, Pyspark. Okay, we have written code only with the Python. We have written code only with the Pyspark. Okay, Python plus Pyspark. We have written code with Pytest, Python plus Pytest. Okay, we can also write. So we can write the framework with a combination of these three: Python, Pyspark, and Pytest. Okay, so with alone Pyspark we cannot implement, but combination of Python, Pytest we can implement. Python, Pyspark, Pytest we can implement the frameworks. Okay, so the one I'm going to cover with the help of Python as a programming language, Pyspark as a data frames to read data from the source and targets, and Pytest to validate the run your test cases basically. Okay? So these are the topics we are going to cover. So earlier batches, right, I was not covering ETL big data fundamental concept, but from this batch onwards, we'll try to cover ETL big data testing concepts as well. So right now in the market, right, so if you observe, so earlier we were using data warehouses. Now data lake came into picture. ELT projects are ongoing now. Many of the companies, they started using data lake concepts. And then in the recent days, right, even they started using delta lake concepts also. Okay, lake house concepts as well. So that's why I thought to cover even big data concepts as well, or the advanced topics that are booming in the market nowadays. Okay, so as part of ETL big data testing, we cover data warehouse concepts and data lake concepts and the data lake house concepts. Okay? And then Python, Pyspark will cover. Python from very scratch will cover, guys. You don't need to any prior knowledge on the Python. From very first line of code, we'll try to teach in the class itself. You don't need to have any prior knowledge on the Python. So Pyspark will cover again from the very scratch. You don't need to have any prior knowledge on the Pyspark. And then Pytest we cover from, so any topic we take, right? So we'll cover from the very beginning, guys. You don't need to have any prior knowledge. Okay. Only prior knowledge is required. You should have some fair idea on the ETL testing and then SQL. Okay. And then we cover GitHub CI/CD pipeline, and then we cover 1-2 live projects. Okay. And so here I just given high level overview on the topic, ETL testing, Python, Pyspark. So this is the topics we are going to cover in the automation. I'll share this document. This is the curriculum for this study. So we start with language fundamentals in Python. So with software setup and then introduction to Python, then some identifier rules, keywords, all of this. And then flow control and then looping structures. Okay. And then string and list manipulations, dictionaries and data structures, okay, functions and methods, okay, exception handling, object oriented. Okay, I do not want to repeat all this. I'll share this document. You can go through this. Okay, logging concepts, and then pandas. Okay, I just mentioned it. We can also implement framework with the help of pandas. Okay, so we'll try to read some files, data, JSON file, Avro files with the help of pandas data frames. Okay. So the reason I'm not using just only the reason I'm using Pyspark, right? So if you go to ETL projects and big data projects, right, nowadays data will be huge, right? So pandas cannot handle huge data. That's why I'm using Pyspark in this automation. Okay. And once we are done with the Python plus pandas data frame, right, we'll cover small framework, okay, which can be used immediately in your projects as a simple approach. Okay. So and then we'll start Pyspark with Databricks, okay, Databricks environment. So we do local setup. We also create some Databricks account, and then we'll discuss how we can run the code in the Databricks environment as well as in our local machines. And then we discuss all the concepts in Pytest, almost all the concepts which are required for ETL automation test. Okay? So how we can write your SQL query to Pyspark code. We will discuss all of those topics. Okay. Okay. I'll share this document. You can actually go through all this. Okay. And then we start Pytest. Pytest for data quality automation, how we can use Pytest. Okay, Pytest topics we'll discuss. What is fixture, how we can create the test cases in Pytest. All of this will cover. And then, as I mentioned, right, we'll also cover Databricks. Yeah, see Databricks. Okay, we cover how we can use Databricks to run your ETL automation code, or maybe to run your ETL test cases as well, okay, manually. And then we'll also cover GitHub, because nowadays, if you go to any project, right? So GitHub is mandatory. GitHub Actions is mandatory for ETL tester, because we need to manage the source code, right? So for that, you need to have some hands-on experience on the Git commands. So we'll cover Git commands first, and then we'll also show you how to automate your automation code in the GitHub CI/CD pipeline. Okay, we cover CI/CD as well. And most important thing nowadays, right? If you go everywhere, AI tools are like buzzword, right? So we also included in view of like everyone, right? So we also included ChatGPT for the last 3 batches. Not just ChatGPT, we can also like use any AI tool, but we'll try to give you all prompts where you can use these prompts in your ETL projects to minimize your day-to-day work. Okay. So first we'll explain how AI works, how AI tools work for ETL testers, and then we'll give some prompts. Okay. And then we'll show you how to generate the SQL queries for ETL testing. Okay. So generating SQL queries for data validations. Okay. And then So the most important thing that we generally do, right, in ETL projects, the test case preparation, that is tedious process, and we end up doing same data test case creation, maybe 1 day, 2 day for simple validations, right? So those things we can minimize with the help of ChatGPT and AI tools. So we'll cover how to use these AI tools in your ETL day-to-day life, day-to-day work. Okay. Also, we'll show you how we can build the frameworks with the help of ChatGPT and then Gemini AI or any AI tool. Okay. So we have written some functions, not functions, prompts. Those prompts can be used, or ready-made prompts can be used to implement the frameworks. Okay. So these are the topics I'm going to cover. I'll share this document with all of you. And then you can go through. If you have any questions, concerns, you can come back on the topics. Okay. So we will also cover one project, okay, project end-to-end project, where we will be utilizing Azure ADLS as a source, okay, Azure platform, all Azure services here, target as Azure SQL Server DB, and ETL tool as a Databricks. So Databricks will use to create pipeline, ingestion pipeline. So where it will read data from the source ADLS and then read and then transform and then load data to the SQL Server databases. Okay. And we'll also cover into the Databricks if you want to deploy the code and then run, right? So we use CI/CD, GitHub CI/CD to deploy the code. So all these things we'll cover. And most important thing, you might be having this question, right? Srini, you just showed a simple ETL validation file to file or file to database. So this does not have any complex ETL logics or maybe SCD type 1, type 2 logic validation. So trust me, we'll cover real-time SCD type 1, type 2 validation in the automation. Okay. I'll also show you simple code where we already have code written. You can see one folder here called SCD. Okay. So we have written code how to validate the SCD type 1, SCD type 2 validation. Okay. You don't need to worry, we'll cover. Okay. Yeah. So these are the topics we are going to cover, guys, in this automation trend. Okay. So any questions now, guys, on the topic wise?
So that is fine.
Yes, sir.
actually.
So,
Yes, sir. Are you going to
in this particular course.
cover connection with
No, one
like
second, guys.
AWS S3 and all that?
Now we stick to only one cloud, maybe Azure or AWS, but I have decided to use Azure. But if you guys want, maybe we can also cover AWS also. No problem. Just only
Because
connection.
most of the projects are nowadays in
This is-
AWS.
So yeah, AWS it would be helpful
Yeah.
for us.
We will see. At this moment, we created project with the help of Azure platform, but we can also maybe we can if we can spend 1-2 days, we can also implement the project in AWS. Okay, that doesn't take much time. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, we'll see the feasibility of AWS.
Will you give access for the practical purpose for AWS?
Yes. See, whatever we do, right, all we'll mostly try to use the open source. For example, Python is open source. Pyspark, we can also do the local setup. So Databricks, we create a community edition. Okay, and then Azure, you guys can create your account as a one month free trial account, or maybe I'll create my paid account and then I'll give access to everyone. Not to run the services, but I'll try to give you, suppose if I create ADLS account, I'll give access to you to access and then run and then upload some files and then utilize it. Simple purpose, I'll give access.
And will you share the recorded sessions?
Yeah, I'll come to that part. Yeah, I'll come to that part. So any questions, guys, on the framework or on the topics that I just shared? Any questions?
Apart from Pytest, do we cover any other frameworks?
Yeah, as I mentioned that we have built so far I built almost around 6 to 7 different frameworks. See, we can discuss multiple framework. The only problem is, if I discuss Python, Pyspark, and then framework, it might take for 2.5 months to 3 months. So if I start one more framework, again it will go for another 10-15 days. So, but I'll give one more framework, so which is not using any Pytest concepts. So this is one more framework where we are not using any Pytest concepts. Okay? So code I'll give, but you can actually go through the code and you can understand it. So this is one more framework where we are not using any Pytest or BDD frameworks. Just simple scripting to do ETL and big data automation using Python and Pyspark. Yeah. So you can see my screen, right? There are two frameworks. One is TAF, which is implemented in Pytest, test automation project, which is implemented with the help of only Python and Pyspark.
Okay.
Will you also be covering the integration with the database like Postgres or Oracle or
Yes,
any
yes,
other
yes.
database?
Yeah. The one I just showed, right? This test case, right? Table 12 is integrated with the Snowflake DB. It's a Snowflake. See, target is a Snowflake. You can also see the credentials here. This is not ideal approach to keep the credentials, but so this is a Snowflake account. So I've created my own account and then kept. So whenever I execute table 11 or table 12, it will read data from the Snowflake account. Yeah. So in this, like in this automation classes, right? Yeah, I'll take one by one. 1 second. So in this automation classes, right? So we'll cover almost all the databases. Okay, don't need to worry. Srini will cover only Snowflake or we'll cover only SQL Server or Oracle. I'll try to give you the guide. With that guide, you can connect to any database. Any database. SAP, you can connect. DynamoDB, you can connect. TrenoDB, you can connect. PrestoDB, any database you can connect. But I'll give one guide. But in the class, we'll cover 3 to 4 different databases. Popular one. Okay. So you can also see, right? Postgre we covered. SQL Server we covered. This is Postgre. Somewhere we are using SQL Server also. Snowflake, yeah, SQL Server. So I'll try to cover 3 to 4 different databases. But if you guys want some additional databases like SQL, NoSQL DBs like Cosmos DB, DynamoDB, I can also cover one database on that as well.
Are we also covering the data test data generation part?
Yep. Yeah, actually, we have written some custom code to create the test data. The reason because see, if you go to any ETL project, right, the test data generation is not simple because each project will need some different set of data or different set of records, right? Just do the positive testing and negative testing. So one code I've written just to explain here, test data generation here, data generation for one of the file. So this file is having some 10-15 columns. See vendor ID, trip pickup, date, trip drop off day, right? So each have some different use case. So I'm generating test data here to do the validation of this trip data file. Okay. Same way we can create for other files as well, but it's a fully customized code where you can integrate before running your actual development ingestion pipeline, right? So we have to run the test data generation code, which will generate positive test data, negative test data, and then execute your automation code, I mean ingestion code and then automation code. Yeah, we can integrate this kind of test data generation tool, but it is not one-stop solution actually because each project will have some different use cases, right? Some need some data, existing data that is already there in the database table, right? So it's not fully fully ready-made code, but we can customize this code as and when we need it. So you can see 10% of the negative test data I wanted. So we have written some incorrect data, okay? Incorrect test data. And then we create some kind of file here. Okay. Yeah, it is covered, but not full-fledged, but yeah, we can customize this code to the next level. Yes, it's already 10:07. I do not want to take much time. I'll quickly finish another 2 slides and then we'll take some more questions. Okay. I know few of you are raising hands. Just wait few more minutes and then I'll take questions. Okay. So additionally, right? So Python, Pyspark framework, it's okay. Additionally, what I'm going to cover or maybe additional benefits, what you are going to get in this training, right? So Databricks basic concepts. So GitHub CI/CD, I already showed in the curriculum, right? ChatGPT, and then if you are currently working in the project where you need to automate your current project, ETL project, the current ETL project automation, or maybe big data project automation, or maybe you are trying outside as a new opportunity as a ETL automation, right? We do some preparation interview, we give some resumes, mock resumes. Okay, we'll also do some mock interviews for you to get hands-on the ETL automation interview process. Okay? See, as much as I can, I'll give on this preparation part, but it's your responsibility to prepare all the topics, whatever I'm going to cover. And then we do a live session as well. So this live sessions, right? Maybe I'll cover. Yeah. So every week, Monday to Friday, we cover we cover actual classes Monday to Friday, morning 7 to 8 a.m. IST. But on the weekend, right, Saturday or Sunday, one of these 2 days, we do the live Q&A session. So in this live Q&A session, we cover 1 second. Sorry. So in this live weekly Q&A session, right, we try to discuss all the questions, all the interview questions, the topics that we covered in that week. Suppose Monday to Friday I discussed pandas topic, right? So on the weekend session, we cover all the interview questions on the pandas. So on the next week, maybe we discuss Pyspark. So the next weekend, we cover all the Pyspark interview questions. Okay. Or not just only Pyspark interview questions. If you have any clarifications needed on any topic, or you need me to explain some other topic, right? So we will utilize this Q&A session just to discuss some additional topics, or just to discuss some interview questions, or just to write some online test. Okay. So that's how the training will work, guys, here. Okay. And then we also give the recorded session on the same day with 6 months access. So today, suppose we conducted one session today, you missed it. I'll upload the recorded session on the same day. You can also see the previous batch recorded sessions here. So we create day-wise folders here. So from day 1, you will find the course. Day 0 installation, day 1, day 2, day 3. And yesterday's session was day 58. I think day before yesterday's session was day 58, 23/0/2024. So likewise, we upload all the sessions. You can see the code that is used in this session. Okay, you'll find all the notes, all the necessary information during that day topic. Okay? You can also see the notes. So we give all the notes that we covered in the class, both PPTs as well as the documentation, the document part. Okay? Okay? So this access will be there 6 months. Okay, but in case if you want to attend, maybe some personal reasons you couldn't complete this training within 6 months, right? Training will go for 2.5 months, and then you will get another 3 months or 4 months access. In case if you couldn't complete within 6 months this complete training, right, you can ping me. We can see the feasibility. Okay, maybe you can join the next batch that I'm going to start that time, or maybe I'll give some alternate solution for it.